Northern commercial vessels just flew the flags of other countries. That's one way they would get away from it. So, in all, to sum up, I guess, let me say that the Confederates did the absolute best they could. They had overwhelming odds against them. They really were lacking in naval technology, naval yards, naval. They didn't have certainly not what we call a naval base today. But despite this, they did the best they could, and they put some serious hurt on the Union ships, but it just wasn't enough in the end.
Yeah, this is a good extended excursus to look into because the focus of the series has been on major Civil War battles. But even if we're not looking at direct naval engagements, river fleets and also fleets on the open sea had very important impact on the war. The siege of Vicksburg. Vicksburg was bombarded continuously. Was it by river fleets or was it fleets in the Gulf?
Yeah, Vicksburg is on the Mississippi. Okay. It's pretty far north of the Gulf. So it was bombarded. Well, primarily it was bombarded by land forces, but for a while it was attacked also from the river.
Right. So even on engagements that we would think mostly as land engagements, if it's close to a river, they are getting involved, to say nothing of how the blockade affects commerce, how it affects the overall war effort, which the Confederacy is critically short of supplies later on. So you can well argue that it was successful. So yeah, this is an important component of the war as well. Well, we have finished up the war, but we are still not done with the series. Like in The Lord of the Rings, then you get into all the appendices that Tolkien has at the end. Something to look into is what happens to all of these figures that we followed throughout the war? What happens to the politicians and the generals? Because the background of many of these people is very eclectic. Unlike today, where you would expect a general to be a career military man, because where else would you find a general? Many of these people were bankers, priests, or even more eclectic backgrounds. So what happens to them once the war ends and the U.S. is mostly demilitarized? And then we're also going to look at the long-term changes that happen in the United States in the political, military, social, and technological realms. And then we're also going to look at historiography, which is just a fancy way of saying how is history made and how is the history of the Civil War itself understood, which is still an ongoing debate, sometimes a fierce debate. What started the war? Was it slavery? Was it states' rights? Was it a mix of the two? These issues that people still argue about today. So we'll get into all of those things in the next episode. All right, well, that was the episode for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. First of all, I'd like to thank the Knowlton's Rangers, and especially our spy masters, Baron Fraser, Carl from Norway, Chris from Maine, and Melissa Sarnowski, and I'll explain what that means in a second. If you want to support the show and help me keep producing this content, there are 4 easy ways for you to do it. 1, subscribe to the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you want to do that, you can go to historyunplugpodcast.com and there you'll find instructions. 2, join our Facebook group, which you can find if you just search for History Unplugged. And please like and share posts that I put up about new episodes. 3, submit a question to me so that I can answer it on air. You can email me at info@historyonthenet.com or leave a voicemail. And again, go to historyunpluggedpodcast.com and you'll find instructions. Lastly, and I think this one is the best, is to become one of the Knowlton's Rangers. The Knowlton's Rangers were an elite reconnaissance and espionage detachment of the Continental Army in the Revolutionary War, but it's also the name of the History Unplugged membership program. Learn how to join by going to patreon.com/unplugged. So here's what you get if you become one of the Knowlton's Rangers. If you join at the level of Scout, you can get early access to new podcast episodes, along with enjoying absolutely every single episode of the History Unplugged podcast ad-free. All 270 and counting episodes. If you join at the level of Intelligence Officer, you can also get access to premium episodes, like a multi-part series on the life of Audie Murphy, the most decorated combat soldier in World War II, or the 10-part series Ottoman Lives, a series that looks at the cast of characters that made up the Ottoman Empire, such as the Sultan, the Eunuch, the harem servant girl, and the soldier. And finally, if you join at the level of Spy Master, You get all the same stuff as the scouts and intelligence officers, but you also get a shout out to you and or your business at the end of each episode, a 3-pack of hardcover history books, plus you'll be put at the very front of the line for me to answer your question about history, and I can guarantee I will dedicate an episode that's about an hour long or so to your question. Sign up at patreon.com/unplugged. Again, that's patreon.com/unplugged. Anyway, those are the ways you can help out the show. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks for listening to the History Unplugged podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get your daily dose of all things history related, from ancient Greece to the Cold War. We'll see you next time at the History Unplugged podcast.